So this is a training video for the STR VideoCom overlay software. So we load the software, and then if the IP camera has been set up correctly, it should automatically connect to the IP camera. At the moment you can see that we've got some overlay messages on screen with the GPS and a depth sensor and just a fixed text overlay which can be adjusted to any text that you need to be present on the overlay. If we look at the IP video config tab, we can see there's various settings on here. The IP camera address at the top left here, and we have some display image controls, and at the moment it's set to resizable, and what that will do is it will rescale the image to the size of the window here so you get to see the whole image. And if we click on the native size, you can see it's a pixel per pixel view, so it's 100% zoom. So that would be good if you wanted to sort of zoom in and see closer detail, but most of the time you'll run at resizable. We can stop the connection to the IP camera by pressing the stop IP camera button, and from here you can then adjust settings like the compressor that we're going to use to record. So if we click on the configure compressor, and I bring it on screen, that we can see all of the numerous settings that we can adjust. Currently it's set to record at only 1024 kilobits per second, which is quite low, so I can set that to 3000 kilobits per second, so the quality of the image will be better at the expense of a larger recorded file and also slightly more CPU usage. All of the other settings here are set up to be optimum for our software. So if I go ahead and just start the camera again, so the IP camera then gets reconnected. If we move along to the next tab, the fixed text overlay, we can see that we have a little text box up the top here, and in there I can then type in, say, survey delta as an example, and you can put anything in there like mentioned before, and by clicking and holding the mouse button you can move that logo around, or the overlay around the screen, and position it wherever you want. You can also change the background color of the overlay by clicking on this transparency button, and you can also change font settings, and then you can change the font size, the typeface, the color, and anything that you need to adjust. And we can also change the back color, so it's easy to see on our given background. Logos can be selected with a select logo button, and then we navigate to where the image is kept and double click on it. It can display a wide variety of image format types, for example bitmap, GIF, JPEG, etc. So we'll click on this one and it comes up to say it's loaded OK. And if I click on the show hide logo button, we can then see the logo appears on the screen, and that can be moved around by holding the right mouse button and dragging around to where you need it. Images with a white background can be made transparent by clicking on the appropriate button here. And if we want to hide them again, we can do so just by clicking on the checkboxes. If we move along now to the File Directories tab, this indicates where the recorded files and serially recorded data are to be stored. By default, they're stored on the C drive in a folder called Data. Now that folder doesn't have to exist. When you click record, the software will automatically generate the necessary folders and subdirectories. Or you can then change the directory to a place that needs to contain the recorded files. To start recording, we just simply click on the Start Record button. Then after a short period of time, the recording will begin, and that's indicated by this red Stop Record button being displayed and this red banner up the top being shown too. You can still move around any of the logos or overlay text whilst recording. There's also an ability to add notes on the overlay if you see something interesting or want to make a quick note that would appear on the overlay recorded file. So if we go to the Serial Data Recording tab and then enter into this notes box here, and we just enter any relevant information that we want to appear in the notes and comments box. And double press return, and this will then appear on the overlay along with GPS, time, date and sensor information, and it appears for a fixed number of time, which in this case was 10 seconds, but from the configuration file can be adjusted. The text, font and overlay color can also be adjusted from the INI file too. To make the viewing area even larger than it is, you can click on the Hide Controls button, and this will then make the controls shrink to the top of the screen so that you're seeing a larger image of the actual video itself. And it's been rescaled to fit within the actual window at the moment, so if we actually adjust that, we can make it bigger or even full screen if we actually need to. By double clicking on the title bar, it then gets rescaled. Click again to show the controls. If I just stop the recording for the moment, the preview then resumes, and then we can then talk about the serial port setup. At the moment, serial port A is configured to take GPS, time, date and location. If I click on the serial port A configuration button, you can then see the options for the port and also a preview of the raw data arriving at the serial port. If I wish to make changes, I can close the port, and then you can see that you can adjust the baud rate, the data bits width, parity and stop bits. If I had more serial ports available, I could then see a greater list here, but I've currently only got a couple and one's already in use. So you can view the received data in a variety of formats to help debugging. So I've opened the port up again and click on decimal. You can see a decimal representation of the binary data or a hexadecimal representation. But for our purposes, mostly you would just click on ASCII. So that then just gives you the raw format. So close this port down. So the port is now closed, and then I can open the port again. So just close that configuration form down. The same can be done with serial port B or C. So as mentioned, the port is currently configured to decode GPS data, and this box here shows you the interpreted or passed information has been then converted into an overlay friendly format. You can change the input type with this button here, and there are a variety of formats that can be passed into the overlay friendly format. We've got a proprietary Fugro nav, TaylorLAN navigation, RSTR, depth and compass sensor, an altimeter, or a custom input. And a custom input allows you to decode essentially any message type in a raw format by specifying a start character. The start character must be the same every time for every message string, and it also must end in a carriage return line feed to be interpreted properly. You can also, with the GPS, select a variety of formats by moving across, and at the minute we've got GLL selected, but there are also 3 other types, standard types. So serial port P has been set to the pressure sensor, and if there were an offset in the depth due to ambient conditions, you can press this zero pressure button, and that would then send the zero calibration signal to the sensor. If I move to the record video tab, we have information on this screen, and it tells you the recorded video name. So if I now click start recording again, it then in this box shows you the current file name, the current frame number, and the split section size of the file. So when the file size is greater than, in this case, 1 GB, it'll then create a section break. This is good for keeping the size of each video file to a certain maximum, and also helps in the case of if for some reason there was a corruption in a file, you would only lose a particular section rather than the whole lot. This frame catcher button to the left allows you to take a screenshot of what's currently on screen. So if I put my hand in front and click the button, and click another button and one more, those images are then recorded to or saved to the same directory as the video files, but are stored as JPEGs. As mentioned in the manual, if we go to the About tab, we can see that there's a software license code up the top left here, and this is basically a software security feature which prevents unlicensed users from recording files. Without this code, it's not possible to actually record a file. and currently we can see it is licensed because it's in green and for a period of 9,996 days. If it were wrong, the code would appear in red, and as mentioned before, you wouldn't then be able to record. The details of the actual format of the video, incoming video, appears in the status bar at the top here, and it gives the size of the actual current size of the window which you're viewing, but more importantly the recorded resolution of the video. So in this case it's 1920 by 1080, so that's full HD at frame rate of 27 frames per second. Although it must be mentioned this is a sampled instantaneous value at the point at which the recording started, so isn't necessarily the actual ongoing frame rate, and in this case the IP camera is set to output 30 frames per second, so it's just for indication only. When the system is interfaced to the STR Nano C-Spider Nano Plus system, we then have access to the Peripherals tab, and this tab allows us to control the brightness of the connected lamps by scrolling this little button here, and to enable or disable the scaling lasers by simply clicking on the button. The appropriate serial port must be selected in the interface port control here, because that is connected to the C-Spider Nano Plus portable surface unit, which then interfaces to the controller to allow the lamp brightness and toggle the lasers to be toggled. When operating with a camera which allows control of zoom and focus, the camera controls over here will be made available, but some configuration is necessary to achieve this. This is mentioned in the manual, but also the credentials, that is the username and password of the IP camera connected, have to be correct, and in this case you can see the username and password are shown here. Currently they're greyed out because it's connected, so to change them we'd have to stop the preview and then we can type in the required passwords and username, and then simply, once the camera has connected and as long as it has got the functionality, then we can then zoom in or zoom out or focus near or far as necessary.